Episode 16, our coverage of the coronavirus and my simpleton observations, part 2. We're covering the Chinese vowing to take control of the UN, intellectual property. I can't make this rhyme. Human rights violations. And a toilet paper truck catches on fire. I'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to Home on the Range, the official podcast of 1881 Ranch, bringing you the latest on the products, topics, and techniques for the shooting, hunting, and adventure lifestyles. Here is your host, tactical deployment of small arms expert, and 1881 Ranch Director, Will Egbert Jr.
Okay, everyone, we're back with part 2. We're going to pick up where we left off. I'll hit the March 31st date. I'm going to jump right into this, hoping that everybody has had time to hear the previous episode, number 15. I've got a disclaimer in there, which I can't read again. I made it up on the fly. So just remember that this is not... these things are fact as I see them, as I research them. They're ever changing. Don't take my word for it. Go have these double checked yourself, double checked and verified by a third independent party, so on and so forth. I am not this is not political. This is not left, right. This is not U.S., China. This is none of that. This is just spewing out some facts, watching the lines where they're drawn, and following the dots. Okay, so we'll recap real quick here. The March 31st, J.B. Pritzker extends the stay-at-home till April 30th. New York governor says it's a good thing that we were the first to close down. I keep going back to the same comment, guys. I can't make this stuff up. This is like a playbook of opposites, of a 180-degree opposite. Okay, so here we are. April 1st, the New York mayor calls for young people to, quote-unquote, get the message and stay home. Stop playing basketball in the parks and so on and so forth. I don't understand how they think that, we're distancing each other by 6 feet. So whatever. But, I mean, you're still sweating. You're still wiping your nose, your mouth. You're drooling, things like that. And then you're touching the basketball. And then somebody else touches the basketball and then touches their face. I don't want to say that young people are dumb, because that's not fair to do to young people. I think all people definitely have an issue with connecting the dots, or 2 + 2 = 4. I think most of the time it comes up as 2 + 2 = huh? So here, perfect example. Here in Illinois, as most places around the country, we're able to go to restaurants and order our food for takeout, and go to the window, go to the door, and you swipe your credit card, you pick up your food, and you walk out. So at least you're not hanging around in the restaurants. People can't take care of themselves anymore, so we're keeping restaurants open. So I'm sitting in the parking lot watching this, and waiting for my number to be called, basically. So I'm sitting in my truck. And a gentleman walks up to the door and opens the door. He doesn't have any gloves on, doesn't have a mask on, anything like that. He opens the door and he walks up to the side entrance of the restaurant. He signs his paperwork, he signs his receipt, grabs his credit card, picks his wallet back up. Now I can see this clear as day, right? And I'm watching this, going, let's just see what he does. Let's see if he keeps the whole clean hand, dirty hand thing. And he puts his hand in his back pocket, pulls out his wallet, takes his credit card, stuffs it back in there, puts his wallet away, takes his food and the credit card slip, and then he pushes the door open with his credit card slip hand while he's hanging on to his food. And then walks outside, takes the receipt and stuffs it in his mouth. I said stuffs it in his mouth. He puts it in his mouth because he's hanging on to it. He's going to start digging for his car keys. So he digs for his car keys, unlocks the car, then takes the receipt out of his mouth with the car keys and everything. And I'm like, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. I'm not watching that. And he goes and he gets in his car. And the car he's driving is about $100,000 Lexus. So he's obviously paid pretty well for his compensation in whatever aspects of life that he is able to effect some sort of outcome for his employer. It's a nice way of saying it. He's overpaid. He's overpaid for his mental incompetence. So there's that one. And then the other one, we watched some guy with gloves actually go up to the checkout line in a grocery store, take his mask down with his gloved hands. All right, so he's been touching everything in the grocery store, the carts, everything, right? He takes his gloved hand and he pulls his mask down, proceeds to open a bag of chips and starts eating the chips with his gloved hand. And about a week later, we find the same thing on social media, that some guy actually caught this on camera. This is not an insulated, like, oh, look at that, fine example of a moron. It's all over the world. That's what people are. That's who we are. Our bodies are very resilient, though. I do have to say, they're very resilient, and that's what they've been doing forever. Okay, so April 1st all is well, in Dallas, Texas. A truck carrying a load of toilet paper crashes into an overpass and catches on fire. In a national toilet paper shortage. I guess Hillary Clinton doesn't want you guys to have toilet paper. On April 2nd, Pelosi pushes her $77.4 billion salt tax reduction for her and her wealthy friends. That was great. Give the wealthy some more tax cuts. We need that. We hit 1,000 deaths in one day in New York City. Let's see what else. New York orders that any cardiac patient whose heart cannot be restarted at the scene of the call, that he not be transported to a hospital. Now, I want to make sure that you guys understand, they still have adequate bed supplies in New York on April 2nd. They're still there. The other portion of this is that how can New York City, one of the most populated, densely populated areas in the country, how in the hell can they get by with only having a few hospitals? I don't understand how that is. What do they spend their money on? Dinners out with their Goomba buddies? Come on, another boat that says what bada bing? Come on. Well, that's unfair. Those guys are from Jersey. I find that pretty appalling. Louisiana is now at the April 2nd, the next hotspot for Corona, because of course we're going into Fat Tuesday. And confirmed U.S. cases are now up to 216,000 and 2,200 deaths. It's still at Corona, kind of what the thing is, and you'll have to go look this up because I can't explain it to you effectively myself. I can understand it, but I can't explain it to you. There's a naught factor with most diseases. And Corona's got a naught factor of 1 or 0 or 1, I can't remember. But the regular flu has a naught factor of 3. No, wait, I've got that backwards. No, Corona's got a naught factor of 3. Okay, that means for every one person, 3 are infected instantaneously or immediately. Okay, it's that robust. Whereas the flu, the actual flu that comes by, influenza strain that comes by every year throughout the United States, only has a naught factor of 1. And where this is going is that the coronavirus is running nationally at this point, or internationally at this point, with a solid 2% death ratio. The normal flu, while it does kill a lot more people, because we don't shut down the country and shut down airports and things like that for influenza every year. It does kill more people every year than we've had yet with corona at this point. But it only runs at a half of 1%. That means 0.5%. Not an entire, not 1%, but half of 1% death rate. So that's a big difference when you're talking about percentages and death rates. All right, so April 3rd comes around, and Senator Lindsey Graham out of South Carolina is just now up to date with what a wet market is, and has come out and said it's grossly naive, and his request is to demand that that China's ruler close these and stop eating cats and dogs and bats. I think eating cats and dogs and bats was his actual quote. You'll have to look that up if you don't believe me. But little does he know that a wet market exists, and the GOP behind them, as well as the elite that actually fund these things directly and indirectly by the patronage of these types of markets. April 5th. Australian special reports, and this is now when it's starting to get juicy, right? The things are actually starting to come out. You can't bury the news. You can't bury that many people. You can't kick the reporters out of a country that fast. You can't shut down social media or Twitter feeds that fast. So now things are starting to come out, right? Australian special reports show wide-scale Chinese cover-ups of the corona outbreak. Hubei province, 55-year-old confirmed on November 17th. Now, remember when I said in the beginning, this list is actually a chronological date at the time it was written, at the time in history. So April 5th is when I was writing this. April 5th, it comes out that there was a 55-year-old Chinese man confirmed with corona. They knew it was corona. And this is coming out now. What is that? November, what did I just say? November 17th. So call it December, January, February, March, April. Right? 5 months later, it is now coming out that China has known that, let's say for giggles, that corona has left the building. Right? This is just, it's actually in Chinese documents 6 weeks before alerting the WHO. Wow. At this time, Wuhan on April 5th had an estimated 11 million people. Okay? Before the Wuhan lockdown, let me go back. What was the Wuhan lockdown? Like I'm looking for one of my guests to correct me or fill in the blank here. I'm sitting by myself in pandemic lockdown. Guys, what was that? Was that January? I want to say that, yeah, it was January 14th, 15th, right in there. I'm getting to it. So China suspends the new year. Yeah, here it is, January 1st. Sorry, I was off by 15 days. So January 1st. All right. So at this time, Wuhan had 11 million people. So 2 weeks before the Wuhan lockdown, 5 million people disappeared. Where'd they go? Better yet, this is coming out of an Australian special report. I mean, this is probably kind of, I don't want to say this, but there's no other way to really talk about it. It's much like a Fox News type thing where they just report mostly the facts. So this is what they're claiming. So if 5 million people or 6 million people disappeared in the 2 weeks before the Wuhan lockdown, where did they go? And another number keeps popping up at this point. 2.5 thousand people have died in that area. But we're not reporting that. It's coming direct from interviews with delivery drivers who confirmed delivering hundreds of urns each day to all 8 funeral parlors in Wuhan. And another driver states that he has delivered 5,000 urns to just one funeral parlor alone. Wow. Okay. This one case is more than official numbers related released in China. So just this one number, right, is more than what the Chinese government has released. So I'm not saying that the Chinese government whacked 5 million people or 5 million people died. Where did they go? 5 million people. That's a lot of people. That's not like, it's not a neighborhood. Well, maybe it is in China. I don't know. I've never been there, but it's kind of strange. All right, April 5th. Supposedly it has been confirmed that previous thoughts of the existence of the biolab that it was studying and working on the coronavirus is now true. This I'm still trying to figure out, guys. I don't know where that came from. I didn't take a really good note on that. But this is the really disturbing part, is while China shut down the wet market in Wuhan, that's what they said they did. They shut it down for a day. They hosed it down with some bleach water or whatever they were doing. And they reopened it 3 days later. So the Wuhan wet market is still open. It's still going on. This is coming from the journalists that were kicked out. They're actually there illegally, and they're still reporting. Okay. This is where it gets... this is where you start to wrap your head around the silliness and not the hysteria. The stupid decisions made by human beings. All right, this is where we're at in our world. Our politicians are so vacant. They are so out of touch and not in step with the people they rule. Then we're talking about Europe in this particular sentence. This next section, next section, is that. They rule, all right? That's socialist governments. They rule. Okay, here it comes. In Italy, a returning Italian from China is thought to have brought this disease home, okay? Dozens of patients were misdiagnosed by leading Italian doctors to more misunderstandings and misdiagnoses. Okay. The mayor of Florence on April 5th declared the day a quote-unquote, and I'm not making this up, go look for it. The mayor of Florence, Italy, declared that April 5th is Hug a Chinese Person Day. You heard me. Run over to the Coliseum and go hug, and I know that's not in Florence, go hug a Chinese person. All right? They're trying to do this to quote unquote to help keep down the spread of racism. All right, so this led to groups in Milan doing the same thing. All right, so people in Milan, they got out and they started hugging every Chinese person they could. The Italian lockdown happened too late and was ineffective as residents ignored and traveled south across the continent. Okay? It's kind of weird. Now, this is getting back to that whole meat comment I had. Well, what was it? Well, it's meat. Okay. It's meat. So what are we going to do? Go hug a Chinese person. Yeah. Go hug a Chinese person. Sure thing. Okay. South Korea, 900 new cases per day, down to about 50, all without lockdown. I don't know how they did it, and I haven't been keeping up with that one. Supposedly their preparation, they claim to have the best system in place for all that are attributed to their experience because of they were right there with the 2003 SARS outbreak and the 2015 MERS outbreaks. So they knew what to do and how to not believe the knowledge of Chinese. All right, the Chinese have got patterns and decisions, and they will not change soon. So the Koreans have got this vision and this belief that it's okay, we'll handle it on ourselves, and we don't believe a word coming out of your mouth. That's cool. All right. So the UK, the Brits went into lockdown on March 30th, and by April 1st, the Prime Minister tested positive, and was left no other choice So late in the game, after widespread France the week prior. All right, so France shut down a week prior. Spain, 67,000 went to a soccer game 3 weeks after learning of the corona outbreak in Spain. Why would you do that? I guess it's dumbness, right? Everyone just kind of sits there and goes, it's a flu. You won't get sick. Okay, I think that was more of a Fabrizio accent, wasn't it? I'm so sorry. Fabrizio, I'm picking on you. He's not here to defend himself. It's so great. All right, so health officials told the government that Spain would only have a handful of cases, but now tops Italy at number 2 in the world at this point on April 5th. The death rate is almost 10% in Spain, where elsewhere it's between 2 and 4% at this time, 4 times worse than that of China. It was just blamed on the slow response and the lack of interest in stopping this. U.S. leads the world by this point by 3 times by confirmed cases, but only has 10,000 deaths. At this point, officials were claiming that most of these deaths were in other countries attributed to poor health and aging demographics. Now, we've got baby boomers turning, 80? I think are they 80 or they're about 78 to 85 by now? All right, so we've got plenty of those too. And a friend of the family just passed away in Italy from the corona. So, and they were only 70. So that's that. Okay, New York deaths. All right, 3% death rate, but is led by New York deaths. So New York had 4,200. That's a 3% death rate in New York. New Jersey had a 900 deaths at 3%. Michigan, now this is where it gets weird. Michigan had 617 with a death rate of 4%. California only had 350 deaths at 2% death rate. And Louisiana had 477 deaths at 4% death rate. So that's on April 5th. So I took some pretty decent notes on that day just because I happen to probably be hanging around a little bit more than I thought I would like to. April 7th, I don't do too much news media, rebarking, I should say, but I was flipping through the feeds, and on Fox, Tucker Carlson brought up a good point that if the coronavirus was affecting the healthcare industry or the 501c3 industry, markets or industry, if you will, colleges or universities, it would have been crushed in a week. But because it's there for the little guy, we're going to take advantage of it. So if you can imagine that, those things are run by, I don't want to say elites, but definitely people that do not necessarily have our best interest in their heart. All right, so now we're starting to talk about suicides. All right, so just this week, we've seen a huge increase in suicide and domestic violence. Researchers say that among the highest levels of stress is from losing your job, especially if you have dependents. Now, that makes a good point, because most of our politicians and most of the politicians across the pond, they don't have jobs. They never did have jobs, nor will they have jobs. Their dependents are dependents of the state. They live in multiple $1 million guarded, walled environments. They have absolutely no touch with reality of what is actually making up the country. I've done quite a bit of driving all over the country and some very strange places, and there's going to be a whole post about this coming up too in some of my travels to Marion, Alabama, the birthplace of Martin Luther King. And I got to tell you, coming from Chicago, I've seen poverty. I've seen people, living in boxes and covered up with, newspapers and things like that. And the homeless thing is one thing. All right, that's something you grow up with and you become numb to it and you don't really spend too much time dwelling on it. But then you get in your car and you drive down South Alabama and all through these various little small towns through Georgia and things like that. And the amount of poverty in the country is staggering. And when I mean poverty, I mean they can barely afford a pair of shoes for their children. So the daughter's wearing the shoes from the older son, and the infant's walking around with no shoes on. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because most of these towns were formed by corporations. So they're corporate towns, whether they're coal or some sort of natural resource, or maybe they're into logging. Well, that's natural resource again. So, and you go around and you don't necessarily see this, and you don't see the top level of a house uninhabited because there's a tree growing into it. And I don't mean, a little tree. I mean a big oak tree. It has grown into this house through the window and is growing out the other side of the house. And there's somebody living in the first floor, but there are no windows in the house. And at nighttime, I drove past this particular home, and you could see this flickering glow on the first floor. Curiosity got the best of me, and I probably shouldn't have. I could have probably gotten very hurt, but I stopped my truck and got out, and I walked halfway up to the house and from the road. It sits very close to the road, probably only 100 feet maybe. And I got there, and I could actually see inside the house a little bit. They had a fire in a cast iron tub in the living room. Now, I know this might not, to some of you might be like sitting there going, yeah, I know, we see that all the time, or yeah, I've seen that before. Well, most people haven't. They don't even realize that is going on a daily basis. So, going to my point where the largest stress is when you have children and you lose your job, or you cannot go to work, or perhaps you're an entrepreneur and you've got 2 or 3 employees and you're barely holding on. Because anybody that thinks that working for yourself and owning a small business is like wine and roses, and that, hey, you must be raking in a bunch of money and, oh, wow, that must be nice, has never, ever, ever done it. So that brings me to my point of our politicians don't understand and never will, because a vast majority have never had a real job. I love it. All right, so this gets really kind of goofy too. Indiana's Family and Social Services over the weekend reported they went from 1,000 calls to 25,000 calls in one day. That was for suicide prevention. Okay, they also saw a huge increase on their addiction hotlines as well. This is a serious thing that no one wants to talk about, and suicide in the country. And it's just, it's brought on by people who are just hanging on. And now something like this comes by. But, the politicians don't care. They want their friends to have all the political, the salt tax increased. They want to have the endowment for the arts put on the stimulus package. They want all their friends to pull that out first. And I don't want this to be a very political motivated speech, but these are just the facts. So reports are also going up in our country of domestic violence. Reports of domestic violence is also spiked in this country. Okay. All right, yeah. So reports of domestic violence have also spiked in our country. And this is another one I'm going to show you. This is really kind of cool. What country is renowned for its language of love and its passion and its art? And I'll show you a country that's got a 32% increase in 1 week of domestic violence. That's right. The cheese-eating surrender monkeys of France. I'm sorry, I had to slide in that joke. I like the French. I don't know why they get such a bad rap. They bailed us out in our Revolutionary War. Without them, we'd still be, kissing the ring of the Queen or bowing to the crown. But yeah, I found that really amazing. So now we've all been locked up for, all right, so what? Basically February, March, April. So 3 months. We're already beating our wives. That shows you what type of society. I shouldn't say what type of society. So what our society has been. When I say built on, I mean it has evolved into where we are so used to being out in society by ourselves, going here, going there, that we don't spend enough time with our mate or our families. So there is kind of a silver lining to all of this. I've even come, and been able to take some time and appreciate my children. And if I wasn't knee deep, or if we weren't in lockdown, I'd have been, knee deep or, chin deep in 1881 Ranch at this point. And I would have missed out on so much of this stuff. And, it's kind of fun to kind of just take a breather. And even though the whole world is, burning down around most of us, to kind of just enjoy, going out, starting a fire in the backyard and watching the kids, roast s'mores and things like that. So, there has been a silver lining in there for me. I mean, I've had some hardships just like everybody, but all right. So this is when it gets really scary, folks. We're going to jump because I couldn't handle anymore. All right. So after April 7th, I disconnected. Okay. But these next 2 pages, next 2 pages cover one day. That's it. One day. A lot has happened in the last 48 hours that no one really wants to. I don't know. Maybe you guys are hearing this. Maybe I'm talking to me preaching to the choir. Okay. So last week there was an interview with Maria Bartiromo and Steve Bannon of the White House. Okay, so this is what happens. There's a YouTube link in the description on the webpage for the podcast. So if I said this in the previous episode, in episode was 15. So we've got go to 1881ranch.com/home on the range podcast, all one word. And you'll see in the show notes, in the podcast notes, click on the click on the episode. It'll open up an actual episode page. I'll have links to all this stuff and some pictures and things like that of my notes and so on and so forth. So the Free Republic Chinese in Taiwan can prove on January 31st the human-to-human transfer of corona, while the Communist Party of China was lying to the U.S. and the rest of the world. Okay, so this comes out on April 20th, or, this might have been, a week ago, so April 20, about the 13th or so, right around there. It comes out now, and it's starting to disseminate through that since January 14th, the Chinese have been lying to the WHO. Now remember, I'm going to jump ahead. No, I'm going to leave that. Okay. So they're lying to the WHO. The Free Republic of China in Taiwan is sitting there yelling and screaming that no. Remember what they did with the doctor? He was part of that movement too. That Dr. Wuji. Oh, God. I have so many pages of notes here. How do I find it so fast? Where did he go? He died in the beginning, right? Wildlife farming, disease fighting, China. Oh, here we go. I think he's right here. Lunatic China passes. Yes, China silences the doctor on February 7th. Li Wenliang, something like that. Okay, so since the 14th, the Communist China Party has been lying to the U.S. and the rest of the world. While the WHO, now this is coming from Steve Bannon, who is mainly a front for the Communist Party of China, this is what he thinks, was saying the same thing. No, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It's not happening. So while the Communist Party was downplaying the coronavirus, they're buying up. Now this just came out, and Governor Cuomo figured this out the hard way. He tried to buy ventilators from China at like 3 or 4 times the cost, of open market. And they stiffed him on it. They took his money and they said, oh, no, it's shipped. It's on its way. He never got them. But yet the money's gone. On top of it, he was paying 10 times more for the masks. Now, don't quote me on that one because I'm getting numbers kind of mixed up. But there was a huge increase and he's trying to buy masks, right? So now it comes out that while this was going on, China was buying up the world's supply of PPE and masks. Okay? You can trace the money. I guess they did. I guess Steve Bannon has been on this for a while, along with a couple other people in the White House. But they bought 2 billion masks and 25 million pieces of protective equipment. Strangely, you wouldn't think that this was anything weird, but when you remember, you have to understand as well that this outbreak started in the first confirmed, now we know, in the first confirmed human in bag of incubator was November of 2019. And remember that China already produces half of the masks in the world. Okay? Why would they need the other half? You know what they're doing, and I know what they're doing. They use this as a leveraging tool over the U.S. and the rest of the world. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to spread any more paranoia. At least I'm going to try not to. The U.S. funds the majority of the WHO, much like NATO. Okay? Without us, our involvement, our money, these agencies would shrivel up and die. And so President Trump is really trying to, our president, let's just say, the president of the United States is really looking at this as a hard line to say maybe we should stop funding these people. Now, I don't know if they're good. I don't know if they're bad. I don't care. All I know is they were a stooge and they never let the CDC in. They actually supported China's restriction on allowing the CDC in February into Wuhan. They wouldn't allow us in. Why? Is it because they didn't want us to see the thousands of urns lined up around all 8 funeral parlors in Wuhan? The fact that the city is a living ghost town? All of a sudden, where did all these people go? Where are all these people dying? You know, like all sorts of things. So here's a side note for you. Over the last little bit, China has also tried to compete. Sorry, I can't even read my own handwriting. Also tried to compete to control the intellectual property agency of the UN. The country that spends its life hacking our infrastructure, our cell phones, our TVs spy on us. You all remember the Samsung TV thing, right? There was turning on the speaker, and once you connected it to the internet and your server and your Wi-Fi in your house, it connected the speaker and the video, and Samsung got caught with their hand in the cookie jar going, "Oh, so sorry." Yeah. Well, they're competing to control the intellectual property agency of the United Nations. Why would you allow them to do that? Why would you even... Okay, all right. Let's leave it alone. Okay. Additionally, they were able to weasel themselves in on the agency in the UN for human rights. Now, that might not seem kind of weird because, China, human rights, they got a lot of people. Yeah, they know how to treat them. But after what I've just told you over that last episode and this episode, what are we doing? Why are we part of these organizations? Okay, that was back on October 7th of 2019. They got themselves on the agency for human rights. They call them agencies or something, but inside the UN, there's various, committees, if you will, or agencies. They're actually in the Committee for Human Rights. Okay? October 11th, we started our solid trade talks, during which time they had 1 million Uyghurs locked up in camps. They're locking up Muslims. This is too far. This is way too far. Okay. The Communist Party knew about the Wuhan human-to-human transfer back in December. And if you really, they might have thought, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Let's say the November thing of the 55-year-old man popping up with it. It was a fluke. He didn't really have it. He had pneumonia or something, and we're going to just throw that to the wind because it was misdiagnosed or whatever. So let's say that, right? So in December, and they let everyone die or get infected and then spread this to everyone else to kill your family or to infect your kids. Wow. And then on top of it, we've got our Speaker of the House has the nerve to repeat what was going on in Italy after we know what Italy did, what the mayor of Milan did about telling people go hug a Chinese person. She comes on and says everyone should go to Chinatown. I mean, that sounds kind of racist to me. I don't know. Like, oh, you should all eat Chinese food tonight. You just go be in groups. At this point, we've already locked the borders down. Okay? This was like the middle of February. We've locked the borders down. We've tried to limit our traffic in and out of China. We're limiting certain air destinations from landing on U.S. soil. I believe, and you'd have to double check this, I believe at this point, and it could have been in the first week of March, the freaking Canadians closed the border on us. I guess they didn't want us going up there grabbing our last minute stockpile of poutine. At any rate. And she has the nerve to criticize Trump from behind her bottle of vodka, saying, he can't lead. He's a failure. If this doesn't show you how corrupt, how inept, and how disassociated the government has come from its people, calling the president weak and criticizing him for not being able to lead. Let's get something really, really crystal clear here, everybody. When you talk about the president making these decisions, if you think the president just sits there and wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to do this all by myself. I'm going to run this multicultural, multilingual, multi-international entity that is everything to everyone around the world by myself 24 hours a day and handle all of this information, and I'm going to be the best virologist, I'm going to be the best border patrol agent, I'm going to be the best, foreign policy maker, I'm going to be the best husband, wife, father. You can't be a wife. I'm sorry. Husband, wife, father. God, I just caught myself. Oh, God. You really have to understand how big the White House is. That place is packed. It's packed with people. He has advisors that have been entrenched. He's got advisors sitting there, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. There are people that are so entrenched in the government right now that they sit there and they give him the information that they need to propagate their agenda. So by the time he figures out that it's wrong by another series of, consultants and, experts and, he's one person. He's one person. I don't ever remember Mr. Obama being criticized through his presidency this hard. Never. And, to say that's racism, I heard a gentleman who's very, very close to me. He was laughing. He said, that dude don't even pass the brown paper bag test. Why are you people all falling all over him? And I kind of laughed at it, and I thought about it for a minute, and I said, he's right. And the country was much more together, even though, in my mind, the government did a wonderful job of separating us and dividing us. But whatever. Okay. All right, here's my side note. Here's this phrase again. I just keep writing this. I keep saying it because I believe it. And I can't believe that I can't come up with anything more, but I can't. Here it is. I'm able to make this up, for it's stranger than any work of fiction I could possibly pen. Okay, here it comes. China has been putting military bases around the world. Okay? The last 15 years, they've been putting them secretly around they've been building freaking islands to park battleships on. Okay? They built a freaking island like the Saudis did. Well, the Saudis built a hotel for a bunch of, high-played soccer professionals. Chinese are building them to hold destroyers. All right, they even are trying to put something like 5 airports on Greenland. Now, there's something else about Greenland, too, is because they've been trying to purchase that land mass for many years. I think our president is trying to block it, but then again, it's all up to the people of Greenland and the government of Greenland. So I also have to remind you that a large percentage of the UN, this is where, I'm sure you've heard this, and you haven't, go look at it. This is what the push is to go buy American and bring everything home. Okay, this is what started, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Trump really started on this, and I'm not supporting Trump. Guys, I think he speaks like a buffoon. But I think if you could take Trump and take President Obama's, speaking ability and combine the two, oh my God. Well, I think somebody would say we'd have Reagan or something, but whatever. Yeah, it's funny. Fantasy President Bowl. That's going to be the next one. All right. Remember that most of the U.S.'s prescription drugs come from China. And they even threatened us with it a couple months back when we were in our tariff talks and tariff sanctions, our trade tariffs, right? They said, well, maybe we'll just not send them to you anymore. Keep up with the trade talks, keep up with these sanctions, and maybe we'll just stop sending you medicine. That's a pretty evil person to say something like that. I mean, these are two grown men who are in control of some of the largest countries and most powerful countries in the world, right? We've only got one spinning little blue marble in this galaxy, in the solar system, right? There's only one of them that populates people, that has a population of humanoid individuals, despite what my... I won't go there. They also control the majority of our APIs, and I hate acronyms, but it's those are active pharmaceutical ingredients. So if you wanted to make Prozac or whatever, you need an active pharmaceutical ingredient that makes up the majority of that pill, or the active ingredient in that pill. So that's what it is. This is kind of crazy because while we were negotiating with China, they knew this was going on in the background. And just before they signed the deal with the U.S., they came back with their own agreement, with their own deal. And they only had one thing changed. Now this you're going to have to go find. Okay? This came to me through a say of a say, so I can't verify this, and I haven't had time to verify it. So, but please, go look for this, because I'm going to go look for it too, and I'll probably bring it up again. But wait a minute, you got to wait for it. Here it comes. Drum roll, please. The only thing that China added to their to the trade deal was a clause that said, in the event of a pandemic, they would not have to buy from the U.S. That's right. That's what I heard. That's what I'm saying. I've got to go research it. But I typically don't ever, spread rumors or lies like that. But keep your eye on the ball, guys. If Steve Bannon is correct, and he says that the WHO is actually only a front for a paid political puppet, or a front for the Communist Party in China, you go backwards and find out who actually termed the coronavirus a pandemic. That was the WHO. I don't know about you, but I might be a simpleton from this, an uneducated part of around Chicago in one of the suburbs, but 2 + 2 sure does equal 4 here. I don't know. I don't want to be, screaming and waving the flag and rallying circling the wagons. But guys, the WHO termed this a pandemic, and they even went so far as to correct everyone who's saying outbreak, and they're like, no, it's a pandemic, and here is the definition. Okay? And Google's doing a great job of scrubbing most of this stuff too, or burying it. Now, when does anybody know? Can anybody speak up? Yeah, speak up, let me know. Come on, I'm going back through my things here. When did the WHO say that this was a pandemic? Wasn't it February? First death, Russia oil market crisis, Fed slashes on Feb 3rd, Chinese silence the good doctor, Italy, outside China. I thought it was right here. Could it be here? Yeah. Here it is, March 11th. Okay, so on March 11th, just about 2 months after our trade deals with China. Okay, so if any of this is correct, and you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, and then maybe some sugar, and definitely a glass of scotch. They were correcting everybody else with the proper definition of pandemic. They were pushing this for some reason, and at the time in March, you couldn't understand. Everyone sat there and like, oh my God, it's a pandemic. Everybody got kind of sidetracked with that, and I gotta tell you, there's a couple good links, and there are a couple good YouTube links that I'm going to include on this about a couple other people's videos. And one guy's a doctor, young doctor, and he just goes about what COVID-19 is, what it does. And supposedly, at this point, they're treating it with malaria medicines, as well as asthma medicines. So some really hardcore steroids, I think, some oral steroids. So I don't know anything about that. I can pull up our whatchamacallit. Everyone's watching the death rate and the clock, and maybe not the death rate, but definitely the world counter over at Johns Hopkins. I don't even think you can type in Johns Hopkins without coming up with the corona. Yeah, first hit on Google. Don't you love that? Nothing like spreading panic and hysteria. And I'm contributing to it, I know. All right, here we go. All right, so currently confirmed cases, 785,000 in the U.S. 2.5, I'm rounding up here, right? So 2.5 million confirmed cases in the in the world. 785,000 cases in U.S. Spain is right behind us with 200,000. Italy has fallen down to 181,000. France is at 150. Germany's at 147,000. So on and so forth. Now, our total deaths right now is at 170,000. So let's do some really quick math here. Let's see how, if we've fallen off that 1 or 2%, and then I'm going to wrap up and leave everybody to 25 million dividioso by 170,000. Okay, I did that backwards. I think I've had a little too much scotch. I can't remember to do that. All right. 25 million. Oh, all right. We're at 0.5%. Just over 0.5% worldwide. So that's good. Maybe we have started to turn the corner with this, because a lot more people are being tested, so on and so forth. When I've got a quick picture of the Johns Hopkins site, so I'm sure everybody's seen it. But down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little yellow hockey stick, and that hockey stick's not stopping. It has been on the same trajectory for a while. It has not stopped, has not plateaued, has not started to go, anywhere other than up. So that's kind of goofy. All right, we go over to U.S. real quick. Total deaths in the U.S. are only at, I shouldn't say only, but 42,000. For those of us that have, been affected by this, it is a horrible thing, because you can't have funerals and things like that. But you can definitely see the heat map. It's coming out of New York, and it's moving its way west across the country. You can just see the population dots if you zoom in on the U.S. And it's so you got 15,000 deaths in New York City, 1,300 deaths in Nassau, New York, and then 1,200 deaths in Michigan, and 915 deaths in Cook County. Okay, that's about where I'm going to wrap it up, everybody. If I could ask for your help, we'd like to have a little bit more engagement from everybody and get you guys to rate the podcast. And these are probably these two last episodes. We're going to get back on track. I just thought I had to clear this out because I'm sitting here like the rest of you. And I've got this thing burning a hole in my head because I'm not doing anything else. But if you guys could rate the podcast, share it with your friends, give us some feedback, put in some input, leave some comments, throw it up on your social media page or something. It helps with our analytics, guys, and we'll get a little bit more notice and a little bit more traction. I know we're kind of all over the board with our topics right now. We're trying to, just kind of weasel, get our way out of the corona thing so we can start sitting back down in the studio. It's very difficult to do this type of thing over the phone. Connections are kind of crappy and it doesn't sound so great. So we're hopefully going to get back to regular type topics having to do with outdoors and stuff. So, all right, if anyone has any suggestions for other topics, we'd love to hear them. You can always reach us at membership@1881ranch.com. Until then, stay safe. Wash your hands.
Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to another installment of Home on the Range. Remember, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Till next time, stay wild and true to your heart.